What is going on, investors? That is right. It is Friday. And what does that mean? Well, it means it's time for the FAANG Stock Recap Show, where we recap all the news from all the FAANG stocks, plus Microsoft and Tesla, because you can't spell FAANG without M and T as well. So we'll talk about all those stocks, all the major news. We'll get over to the stock charts as well with these ones. I'm not going to waste any more of your time. Let's jump right into it. We'll kick things off with Facebook. Started the week at 331, ended the week basically dead flat at $330. The big news came today that Facebook says former President Donald Trump can return to the platform in January 2023. He will be able to officially return to Facebook and Instagram on January 7th, 2023. So if you don't like this news, you got about 2 years to cancel your account before the former president comes back on the platform. The EU investigates Facebook over classified advertising data. I thought this was interesting. We talk about this all the time here on the show, how all these tech companies are being investigated one way or another. The EU is particularly interested in Facebook and Google. We see, well, when we get to Google, we'll actually see more of this. So we'll see how this, but what this tells me is, boy, their platform must be really doing well, especially this classified advertising. Okay, it must be doing really well if the EU is taking the time to take them to court. Now, moving on to Apple, start of the week at 124. Like a lot of these stocks just kind of slid sideways. That's not a bad thing. Now, yeah, if you had options trades set up this week on this stuff, or if you we're trying to have these stocks appreciate this week, not necessarily a bad thing, but these things are coiling up, okay? And we'll talk about that when we get over the stock chart. 124 was the start price. We ended up 125 on Apple. Apple is reportedly planning an iPad Pro with wireless charging sometime next year. That is, we'll have an iPad Pro, like you have these iPhones, they have these glass backs or whatever, and so it allows you to put the MagSafe charger on there and basically wireless charge, although the thing you're charging with has a wire. So I've never really gotten wireless charging, but it will be interesting if the iPad Pro offers that in the future. Now, this is interesting. So we haven't talked about the Apple electric vehicle on this show in a while. Seems like kind of the rumor mill around that has really stalled quite a bit, but they're losing self-driving car execs even as the plan moves forward. They've lost 3 key members of its management team, and it kind of makes me wonder, like, okay, if they're about to launch a car, or if some big news is about to happen in this, like, why are these guys and girls leaving? So it makes me wonder, are their plans maybe not as ambitious? And so these executives are moving on. For example, this Dave Scott guy, he went to go to be a CEO at Hyperfine or whatever that is. But look, if you thought that the Apple car was coming and it was going to create a bunch of shareholder value and your Apple options were just going to get better and better, wouldn't you just stay with Apple? But these people are bolting, these executives are bolting. So it makes me kind of wonder that maybe Apple has like a pared down, maybe they're not going to come out with a car like a Tesla. They're going to build these big, giant factories or places to manufacture these cars like Tesla has had to do. Maybe it's just going to be a much, much scaled down, where they're basically going to license out the technology, license out the Apple brand name to somebody else. I would lean toward that, at least at the current moment. Now, Apple gets a rare bear with a New Street price target seeing 30% downside based on iPhone weakness. So New Street Research has lowered their price target from $135, which is $10 higher than where Apple is trading right now, down to a street low of $90. And when we get over the stock chart on Apple, $90 would definitely be, from a technical perspective, an awesome place to get in on this. But their research, actually, their bear side research and their reasoning makes a ton of sense. And just anecdotally, I actually kind of agree with it. They say the 12S type of cycle on the phone it's just not going to be, it's not going to get people like, am I going to buy one? No, I just bought a new phone. I'm not going to buy a new one. Yes, you'll have people that are on a refresh cycle that don't have the 12 that will probably likely want to upgrade at that time. But it's more than likely that we saw the big upgrade cycle last year with Apple. And so you should see some weakness there. and it could drive the stock price down. Now, moving on to Amazon, started the week at 3,239, and like a lot of these stocks, it basically ended the week dead flat, down a little bit, made up for some of those gains or those losses today. Now, Amazon supports 420 legislation and drops the 420 testing along with other policies. So that was interesting. So if you were an employee of Amazon, you had to get a test for this. Now they're going to treat it similar to alcohol, that you can't obviously drink and work at Amazon. And it's the same thing with the green medicine that people tend to like to take. So it could be that they're having trouble acquiring more workers and getting as many employees as they need to. And this is just another way to help funnel more people in the door, since it doesn't eliminate the possibility of hiring some people that might enjoy that type of thing. Now, Amazon sets its Prime Day shopping event for June 21st to June 22nd. I tell you what, me as a seller on Amazon, I sure wish they would have given us a little bit more clarity on this. I've been working for the last really 2 weeks getting all my inventory set into Amazon. That's really a twofold quote unquote holiday or shopping event. Okay. So as a seller, you want to get as much inventory on there as possible by June 21, 22. But what I have found as someone that sells on Amazon is a lot of people go out of stock. Okay. A lot of popular items get sold out on these days. And so the weeks and kind of months following, you actually can have a nice bit of sales after that, because a bunch of your competitors are basically out of stock. They sold out on Prime Day, and then here I come in and I tend to raise my prices after Prime Day. So we'll see if that materializes, but could be some good deals coming up in a few weeks. Amazon MGM deal about more than just playing with Netflix. That's what a consultant says. So I read through this article and it makes a lot of sense. So Amazon's in the advertising business. They've got IMDb, obviously Amazon.com, where they run a lot of advertising. So there's a lot of things that they can do with the MGM and also the Prime streaming. Okay. Obviously you have to be a Prime member for the most part, but they can they can really get big into the video advertising business. There's a lot of things that they can do also with Disney. So Disney comes out with a movie, for example, like Cars. My sons love Cars, and we're constantly buying them, Lightning McQueen and Mater and all this stuff. And so that's obviously a nice little side piece of revenue, and Amazon could certainly do the same thing. As you're watching one of the MGM shows that they owned, like a James Bond movie, well, on the side or somewhere, they can recommend to you that, hey, get the James Bond car, James Bond figurine or t-shirt or whatever it is. So it's about tying this entire ecosystem in together, and considering I don't want to say only, but they only paid about $9 billion. This is a company that's doing north of $100 billion in revenue. That is not a lot of money to pay for that. Not to mention they can borrow money at almost 0% rates if they wanted to. Moving on to Netflix, started the week at 506, slid down to 494. Not a lot of news out of Netflix this last week. They're just laying low. Moving on to Google, started the week at 2,370. Had a nice last couple days of trading, and in fact, today was up about 2%. End of the week at about $2,393. Now, Google, in their news showcase service, is now targeted by German antitrust probes. So they launched this news showcase where they partnered with some media companies, and it was about 50 publications among 20 media companies. Well, Germany's worried a little bit that, hey, this might be anti-competitive. It might eliminate services that may not be quite as big or didn't partner with Google. Well, now their stuff is being shuttered. I agree with this, okay? I don't mind Google partnering with these media companies and highlighting certain ones, but if it's at the detriment of smaller news outlets or ones that don't have quite as big as a budget or not rolled up big conglomerates or whatever, well, their stories and their reporting might go, it might not be searched. It might not be easily found on Google. And so I actually kind of like this, I guess. We'll see what happens going there. Now, here's the deal, though. Anytime you got these antitrust kind of settlements, what ends up happening is Google nears a settlement. So to be honest with you, The German government doesn't really care about the news results. I mean, maybe they do. And it's probably a little bit that they care. What do they care more about? They care about the money, okay? And so Google has lots of money, and so they'll end up doing a settlement. They'll end up slapping Google on the wrist. Google will say, hey, we'll do this, we'll do that, we'll change this, we'll change that. And not a whole lot will change. Maybe a little bit will change. But the government will get a paycheck, and that's ultimately what they are after. Now, moving on to Microsoft, started at $251. You guessed it, ended up at about $250 per share after a nice strong finish to the week. The sellers, I tell you what, they went on an early weekend because the buying really picked up late in the day as we moved into the trading day. Nuance gains after Microsoft gets U.S. antitrust approval for planned $20 billion acquisition. So there was this waiting period. That waiting period expired. That is one of the first hurdles to get Microsoft into Nuance Communications and have this deal consummated to a certain degree. And so it appears this is moving forward, and it appears that Microsoft has a pretty clear path to acquire Nuance Communications at $20 billion. And if you follow the channel and you watch our analysis of Microsoft, we've been talking about this for almost a year now. How Microsoft had all this cash sitting on the balance sheet. And yes, they were paying dividends. Yes, they're doing a buyback, those types of things. But they still just had a ton of cash sitting on the balance sheet. Well, $20 billion will wipe out a little bit. I don't exactly know how they'll finance this. I would guess a fair amount of that, or almost all of it, is going to come from their cash balance. They'll still have a lot, but this will be a big acquisition for them, and expect that to be tangible to their bottom line, or at least their top line going forward as well. Microsoft teams with voting machine maker Hart for secure and verifiable election. I tell you, where were you a couple months ago? So this is interesting. They have this open source election guard software that Microsoft has kind of developed, and it's saying that it allows voters to check that their ballots were counted and not altered, and election security officials can confirm the accuracy of the overall vote. I don't care who you vote for. I don't care if you buy into the last election being stolen or it being totally legit. I don't care. I really don't care. What I do care about, though, is eliminating that conversation. And if you can develop some software and people can trust it and trust that it works and it be somewhat decentralized, then I think that would be a good thing. Okay, I think we would have avoided a lot of the things that we saw last year after the election. And maybe we get speedier results as well. I think this would be a good thing. Hopefully Microsoft is able to pull that off. Now, this is big news, okay? Maybe the biggest news of the whole week. Microsoft reportedly unveiling next generation of Windows on June 24th. We talked about this last week. They were planning an event around this. Looks like it's happening in about 20 days. And as we talked about last week, the update is to unlock greater economic opportunity for developers and creators. Music to my ear. I tell you what, maybe they'll offer a way for people to make money on the Windows system, kind of like maybe you can make money in the App Store, you can make money here on YouTube, you can make money some other different ways. Be interesting if Microsoft gets into that business, see how they pull that off. Moving on to Tesla, probably the worst performing stock of the group. Started the week at $631, ended the week at about $600 per share. Tesla did go higher earlier in the week after they gained some efforts to set up shop in India. So India is one of its big markets, international markets, obviously the EU as well, and obviously China as well. India should provide lots of growth for Tesla, although with these foreign governments and stuff like that, there's lots of hiccups. Just like Tesla saw lots of hiccups here in the United States, they're just kind of beginning that road in India and China. And as we see here, Tesla spun lower after reports on a large drop in China May sales. And so some of this has to do, we saw with some of the other Chinese EV makers, they had explosive year-over-year growth, but if you looked on it quarter over quarter, the sales trend in the first half of the year for China, it seems like it picks up later in the year. So I don't necessarily know if this is something that will continue on, but it was reported on Tencent that a Tesla car owner in Shenzhen almost suffocated when he became locked inside his car. I don't know how that works, but that's probably not necessarily a good look if you're a car maker. Tesla might have some things to work out there. Now, this is interesting too. Tesla eyes restaurant concept. Yes, restaurant concept with new trademarks. So they filed these trademarks, and what people are thinking what Tesla might do is that they have all of these supercharger networks, and they maybe do like pop-up restaurants, self-service restaurant, takeout services at these things. Now, here's the only thing. I don't know how these Tesla leases work, but every time I've been at a Tesla supercharger, it's been in the parking lot of a Target or maybe, like a big outdoor store, or, it's typically like in a big shopping center. And so I don't know if Tesla's just going to be able to set up a restaurant in there. I don't know how that will work. Maybe they partner with somebody. Maybe they just pull up a food truck. I don't really know. But there is an opportunity here, because the times I've driven in a Tesla, you plug that thing in. Typically what we do is we go inside the Target, or maybe there's a clothing store or something nearby where you can kind of browse merchandise. Maybe you buy something, maybe you don't. But it's kind of a pain in the butt to sit there and have your Tesla charge all the way up. It's not like filling your car up with gas. It takes quite a bit longer, especially if you are on basically a zero charge on that thing. Now, moving over to the stock charts, let's take a look at Facebook. What we talked about last week, this thing's locked in an uptrend, but we're trying to get above 330, and that's literally where the stock is hitting right now. We're literally right at $330 on this one, and we talked about how 330 last week was a key level for Facebook. We're looking for it to get above that, and we just didn't see the catalyst, not only for Facebook, but probably the broader markets as well. We didn't see that catalyst, okay? And so we had basically a sideways week where we traded up to this 330, and we haven't broken through. So not to sound like a broken record, but next week we're looking for the exact same things we were looking for this week. We're looking for a break above 330 that would trigger, in my opinion, from a technical perspective, a breakout, and you might get some momentum, people kind of piling into this one. I could see it going higher. Now, from a buy the dip opportunity, a pullback opportunity, you're looking for a rejection here at 330 and then a break of kind of an upper trend line. The first spot on the way down is about $300 per share, although you will have completely broken trend. So we'll talk about that. But I would expect sometime over the next week, 2 weeks, something's going to break with Facebook. We're either going to break up above 330 or we're going to break down. I don't necessarily see us hanging out there for a longer period of time than we normally see. Now, moving on to Apple, just channeling sideways with Apple. Dead middle of the range. We were basically stuck between 123, 125 on this one. If you like Apple, this is not the worst spot to accumulate some shares. If you don't like it, or if you're looking to buy it lower, you're looking for a break below 119, 120 on this one, okay? You're looking for a break below this. If you're bullish on this one, you're looking for a really big break above 135. I don't necessarily see that materializing anytime soon, but if it does, I would expect the entire market to go up, because if Apple is able to go from 125 up over 135 and then push these all-time highs into the 140, 145 range, tell you what, the entire market will probably be rallying at that point. Now, Amazon's in the same boat. We are just channeling sideways. We have just not broken this channel in a long time. This channel started all the way back really July of last year. So almost 12 months we have been range bound with Amazon. And it's not necessarily something that's uncommon. Okay, these stocks, when you pull out the max chart, it just looks like a straight line up, but they do channel sideways, and sometimes for a long period of time. I remember it wasn't last year, but I think in 2019, Amazon was kind of an underperformer of the FAANG stocks. Okay, it kind of channeled sideways for a year. I was able to pick up, I think, 2 or 3 shares that year. So I was actually kind of excited when it channels sideways. With Amazon, you're looking for a break below 2,900 on this one. That would signal a complete breakdown of this trend. On the way up, you're looking for a break over 35.50, which is about $350 more than where the shares are now. And again, just like Apple, if Amazon for some reason were to push this upper trend and get above the all-time highs, well, I tell you what, the entire market would probably just be humming along. Now, moving on to to Netflix, similar story here, okay? We have just been channeling sideways for basically a year between 470 and we'll call it 560. You could even bump it up maybe $10 so you can remember it. From 470 up to 570. This is where this one has been channeling. Not a lot of news, as we've been talking about here on the channel. There's not a lot coming out of Netflix, okay? You'd like to see for them to take their next step. What's that next catalyst? They obviously probably have a little bit harder opportunity. Like, they probably would have liked to buy MGM or maybe some of these other studios, Discovery, things like that have been on the block, but they probably would have trouble getting that by regulators to a certain degree. And their balance sheet just not quite as big and bloated as an Amazon or even like an AT&T. So we'll see what happens here. But Netflix at the current time just channeling sideways. Now, what's not channeling sideways? What keeps channeling up? That is Google stock. This thing is locked in an uptrend. I know this is really sophisticated technical analysis right here, okay, guys? But sometimes it's literally as simple as this. It's pulling up a daily chart, a weekly chart, monthly chart, whatever you want to pull, and just kind of taking a step back. Like this is stretched back all the way into last year, but it looks like our uptrend had kind of started in September of October of last year. And it just hasn't broke. This thing has just gone up, channeled sideways, gone up, channeled sideways, gone up, channeled sideways. And you're looking for a breakdown below. I think you want to wipe out these lows here. This thing would have to pull back like $100 to almost $200 per share before you really got concerned that this uptrend is no longer intact. We'll see what happens going forward with Google. But in the meantime, that thing is on an uptrend, and it is in an uptrend until further notice. Now, moving on to Microsoft, similar story. So we talked about this last week, and I actually anticipated, or I kind of thought that maybe Microsoft would break out. I thought maybe Microsoft and Facebook and possibly Tesla as well would break out this week. We just didn't see it, okay? It was a quiet week in terms of volatility. We'll see if that volatility picks up going into next week or the following week as well. Again, we're still miles away from earnings on these guys. These guys just reported earnings last month, so we're probably still a solid 2 months, 60 days or so from earnings. So we're not going to see that catalyst, okay? And it's tough for these guys to do acquisitions, although Microsoft just looks like they're about to complete the Nuance one. But we are in an uptrend with Microsoft. I know this is, again, real sophisticated technical analysis, but we are in an uptrend, and until further notice, I would expect this one to bounce, like literally bounce right where it's at, okay? If it doesn't bounce where it's at and we break down, there's an opportunity to buy down here at 240. I probably would wait until under 240, okay? Because as you come down here to 240, this trend will be broken. It might signal some technical stuff, and really the trend isn't broken until you get down below 240 on this one, okay? It would then wipe out the lows we made here because we're still making low, higher low, higher low. And if you don't wipe out 240, you basically just made a new low and you could potentially come back up, okay? Or you're looking for a breakout above 262. Honestly, I don't know what has a higher probability, but if you do break down below 240 on this one, I personally would think about stepping in on this one. It could just like the other stocks, Amazon and Apple, it could be, I'm actually anticipating at some point Microsoft ends this uptrend and then does that sideways wave that Amazon and Apple has been in for months. Okay, so I would like to buy the dip on this one. But the other thing that could possibly happen is we bounce right here at 250 and we just resume this uptrend just like Google. So in my opinion, Microsoft's going to go one or two ways. It's either going to be like Google and it's just going to keep going up and up and up, okay, until it, eventually finds some resistance, some sellers step in, or it's going to start to channel sideways like Amazon and Apple. Again, that is all predicated on the overall markets. We've got inflation fears, interest rate stuff, government spending, all that stuff. You know what I mean? Like, that stuff can pull the entire markets down. If the entire markets get pulled down, look, you don't really have to worry about these technical charts to a certain degree. Now, Tesla, we talked about how I thought it was going to break. This thing is still going to break one way or another, okay? We are coiling here, okay? This is like just your, just perfect setup here that it's going to break up or down. When you see these kind of flags, they want to break upwards, okay? But Tesla could go either way, okay? And so now you're really looking for a break above, I would say 630-ish on this one, maybe even upwards of 650 on this one. You want to break above this downward trend line, okay? This downward trend line is intact right now until further notice. And really, the level that you really want to pay attention to is about $50 lower. We're sitting about $600 on Tesla. You're looking for $50 higher or $50 lower. You break down below 550 on this one. Look, down here in play is the $400 level. This is where I want to get in on Tesla. We'll see if that materializes or not. $50 above is $650. That will wipe out kind of the low we made here. It'll get us above this trend line, and look, then it could be off to the races to the upside. I will be paying very close attention to Tesla, because one thing that you could potentially do as you come down here to this 550 level is just guess, basically, or gamble. I hate to use the stock market and compare it to gambling, because in a gambling situation, unless it's like poker or something like that, you're playing against the house, and the house has an edge on you. Whereas technical analysis and understanding stocks, I think you have a better edge than that, than you versus MGM, you versus Caesars, that type of thing. So as you pull down here to 550, this is a buying opportunity for Tesla, okay? And it could be a buy, you're buying here at 550. I could see setting a stop loss at 500, okay? So $50 under, because you could buy here at 550 and your upside could be all the way. I mean, your upside could be huge, because if you bounce here at 550, it would mean that buyers stepped in, sellers evaporated, and boy, the moment, this is where this like kind of descending triangle could break, and that could be your upside target for Tesla. We'll see what materializes in the coming week. I thought we could have an eventful week this week. The volatility just wasn't there. So strap on your seatbelt. It could come as early as next week as well. So we'll see what happens with these ones. Hopefully you guys have a great week. I'm going to be at the US Open this weekend. In fact, one of the young ladies that's in the lead is a friend of mine. So I'm excited. I will be there, and hopefully we'll see a friend take down the trophy. Hopefully guys enjoy the day. We'll be back again very soon with more videos. Good luck with your investments.